Hey, I'm Kai. I've just got my Orange Rockerverb Mark II back from a full service, and I wanted to do a quick sort of re-review to see whether or not it was worth it. Now, you may be wondering what led me to get this amp serviced in the first place. There were a couple of minor, squirrely little issues that I've been facing ever since I got this amp. Firstly, with the clean channel all the way down on the volume, it would be at maximum volume. There'd be a sort of scratchy resistance up until you get to 1 where it really starts to kick in, and it'd be fine from there. It also suffered with a sort of strange, oscillating, almost distorted tone behind the clean tone. Now bear in mind, I bought this amp used. It's a Mark II, so it could be up to 15 years old, so this is the sort of thing you can expect when buying used amps from time to time. These didn't really bother me too much. I was able to play around them quite easily, and it didn't really affect me in any way. Over the course of about a year though, more and more little problems started showing up. I had more of these oscillating noises coming behind the drive channel as well, and it started sputtering and getting a little bit weird on me. The main thing that was concerning me though is that the amp was suffering from some pretty major shutdowns. It would lose all output and my captor fans would just spin up like crazy, and then I'd panic and just turn it off as fast as I could. When it happened the first time, I sort of ignored it, just put it down to something in my setup that had gone awry that day, so I didn't think anything of it, left it a month, and then it happened again. After this shutdown thing had happened a second time, I figured it was time to stick the amp in a cupboard and get it repaired when I can. I'm still not entirely sure what caused these issues, whether it's just the age of the amp, or whether it's something in my setup that was causing it. I do have reason to believe it was the Captor 8 load box that I'm running, however, no fault of the Captor 8 itself, but rather how I've been running into it. My current leading theory is that it was happening as I was diagnosing the clean channel volume pot. When I was turning it all the way down and the amp was maxing out, that probably wasn't doing the Captor any favours whatsoever. While the Captor is rated for 100 watts operation, the amp is able to put out way more than that on a maximum load. I also could have just generally been cooking the amp a little bit too much. I'd only ever had the master up to about halfway or so, but on a 100 watt amp that's still an awful lot of volume. So once I decided that the amp was sort of fried, or at least temporarily, I started to look around for local amp techs, and it was incredibly unfruitful. Everyone that I was able to find in my countryside rural area had either stopped taking jobs for the winter, they'd retired entirely, or they'd been passed away for 10-15 years. So I got in touch with Rowan at Keld Ampworks up in the north of England, and we got chatting, discussing back and forth to see whether it was a tube issue or something deeper, and it didn't sound like it was entirely tube related. So I boxed up the Rockerverb, I shipped it off to him, which was about £30 each way, and he repaired it for the total cost of £350. After diagnosis, the amp received nearly a full set of tubes, a new volume pot, as well as a general service, cleaning, biasing, all that good stuff. The entire process took just 13 days, including both sides of shipping, which is an incredibly fast turnaround time. So I suppose now would be a good time to get into some sound clips. For the rig today, I'm running my Balaguer semi-custom Woodman into the Orange Rockerverb, into the 2Notes Captor 8 load box, then into my interface, where I've got the ML Sound Lab Mega Oversized cabinet loaded up. The exact impulse response that I'm using is the Almighty mix. Now unfortunately, I didn't get any clips of how it was sounding before, as the sort of sputtering shutdown thing had panicked me to the point where I didn't want to get anything prior to the service. Let's start with some clean tones though. I'm running into the clean channel of the amp, and this is going to be the Bridge Humbucker. I'll also dial in something for the split neck pickup in this and add a touch of reverb and delay from my pedal board. Switching back to the Bridge Humbucker now, let's try out the dirty channel of this amp. The first thing I'd like to try out on the dirty channel is to see how clean it can get, as this was something it really struggled with prior to the service. Okay, it's still pretty dirty, but that does sound more like how I expected the amp to sound, rather than before where it sounded like something was breaking. I'll try and dial in a crunchy sort of thing that's crunchy on the Bridge Humbucker and clean on the neck split. Pushing it even further, I'm going to go into what I would call a high gain tone. Finally, let's push this gain up into sludge territory. Definitely gets super noisy with the gain up high, but it sounds fantastic. I'd be remiss not to try it out with some pedals, so the first thing I want to do is try out a high gain tone. I'm going to boost it with the Guptec Mad Hue on the Hue side, which is the Friedman Buxom Boost. I'll also engage the Fortin Zool noise gate just to tighten things up a little bit. It doesn't get as tight as something like the 5150, but it definitely has its own flavour and would blend really nicely with something like a 5150. Of course, I need to hear it with some fuzz as well, so let's dial it in for the Demiurge Doomy. This is their take on the Life pedal. One final pedal heavy tone, let's go for something big and riffy with an octaver up front. So the octave effect is coming from the HX1, I've got the Earthquaker Devices plumes for a little bit of extra drive, and in the effects loop I've got the Fortin Zool. One final thing I want to try out with this amp is how it suits a stupidly low tuning, so I'm going to grab my recently modded G4M 638 30-inch baritone in drop E. So here it is, it's tuned almost an octave down to drop E, it's got a custom set of pickups from Ryan's Guitar Mod Shop, and I'm running through the Guptec Mad Hue on the 33 side, and we've got the Fortin Zool in the loop once again. Let's hear this one. Onto the re-review. I do think the £400 all in that it cost to get this amp prepared was absolutely worth it. It is an awful lot to spend on an amp that only cost me £700 used. That's only about £300 of deficit between repairing this one and buying a whole fresh used one. I did debate selling this one off for spares and repairs. I could probably get the $400 for it and then only have to pay $300 on top to get another used one, but the used one may have issues too. Sure, I could have saved myself £100 on the job, but I've now got an amp that's probably better than it was in brand new condition. It sounds so much better than it did before. The clean tones are actually clean, the drive tones have the full range of drive that I was expecting, and I know that it's going to last me a while. It's just generally great to play through now. I think this is probably the best this amp is ever going to sound, and I'm so glad that I went through with the repair job. That's everything I've got for this video though, so thank you ever so much for sticking around to the end. I do have affiliate links in the description box down below, so if you wanted to purchase yourself something like this G4M 638 baritone for instance, it'd go a long way towards helping me out if you could click that.